Sherlock Holmes and the Sir Reginald Ponsby Case by Namoko Nikora. Chapter 1. A Call from the Past. Tom, Mark and Tipo couldn't shake the excitement of their previous adventures with Sherlock Holmes. As summer faded into autumn, the air grew crisp and leaves turned golden. One late afternoon, they found themselves drawn to their favourite oak tree once again, a sense of anticipation bubbling within them. "Do you think we'll see him again?" Mark asked, a grin spreading across his face as he collected a few fallen leaves. "Absolutely. We still have a mystery to solve," Tipo replied, his eyes sparkling at the thought of new adventures. "I can't wait to go back," Tom said, stepping closer to the tree's hollow. "Remember how exciting it was?" With shared determination, they leaned into the gnarled opening, feeling the familiar rush as colours swirled around them, spinning them into another adventure. Chapter 2. Return to Baker Street. The boys landed once again on the foggy streets of 19th century London. The unmistakable sound of horse-drawn carriages clattered by amidst the bustle of city life. "Here we are," Tom said, looking at their surroundings with renewed wonder. "Let's head to Baker Street." Navigating the labyrinth of streets, they reached number 221B, their hearts racing with excitement. They knocked, and Mrs. Hudson opened the door, recognition lighting up her face. "You three? Back again, I see," she exclaimed, ushering them inside. "Sherlock is in the middle of another case. He will be delighted to see you." Sherlock Holmes stood by the fireplace, a pipe in hand, deep in thought. When he spotted the boys, his face broke into a rare smile. "Ah, my young friends, your return is a welcome surprise. I could use your assistance again." Tom could hardly contain his enthusiasm. "What's the case this time?" Chapter 3. The Mysterious Murder. Holmes motioned for the boys to sit. A tragic event has unfolded. A prominent member of society, Sir Reginald Ponsby, was found dead under suspicious circumstances at a gala held at his estate last night. His body was discovered in the library, and the circumstances surrounding his death are perplexing. "What did the police find?" Mark asked, leaning forward. "Very little, I'm afraid. Witnesses reported strange noises, but none have concrete information on what transpired. Furthermore, there are several individuals who stand to gain from his demise. This is where you come in. Your fresh perspectives could prove invaluable," Holmes replied, placing a document on the table. "Let's do it," Tipo exclaimed. "Where do we start?" "First, we will visit the crime scene," Holmes said, grabbing his coat and hat. "Time is of the essence." Chapter 4. The Gala at Ponsby Manor. As they made their way to Ponsby Manor, Holmes explained further. Sir Reginald hosted a lavish gala to promote his new investment in the railway. Attendees included various investors, socialites and rivals. The library is where he was found, and it will provide insights into the people who attended and their motivations. Upon arriving at the grand estate, the boys stared in awe at the extravagant architecture, chandeliers twinkling in the entrance hall. The air felt heavy with residual tension. Entering the library, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. A massive bookshelf lined the walls, filled with ornate volumes. The room bore evidence of recent commotion. Papers were strewn about, and an overturned chair lay near the fireplace. Holmes began his inspection. "Notice anything unusual?" he asked the boys. Tom stepped closer to the desk, running his fingers over the scattered papers. "These ledgers don't seem to belong here. Were they part of the gala decorations?" Mark examined a glass on the table. "This glass is broken. Could it have fallen during a struggle?" "Excellent observation," Holmes encouraged, his eyes glinting. "What else do we have?" Chapter 5. Gathering Evidence. The trio divided to scour the room, noting every detail. A sudden thought struck Tipo. What about the guests? Should he find out when they arrived and who last saw Sir Reginald? Holmes nodded approvingly. "Correct. We must gather statements and identify any motives. Let's return to the guests from the gala." Back in the grand hall, guests were still murmuring about the incident, whispers of fear and intrigue filling the air. The first guest they approached was Lady Helena, a woman with a striking presence and an air of detachment. "What do you know about Sir Reginald's death?" Mark asked gently. Her eyes flickered with calculation. "What can one say about the circumstances? He was a shrewd businessman and many disliked him." Tom noted her shifting posture. "Did you have an argument with him?" he ventured. "A heated discussion regarding investments, I must admit," she said, her voice dripping with feigned innocence. "But who could despise him enough to kill him?" Holmes observed her closely, but moved on, suggesting they speak to other guests. Chapter 6. A Web of Lies. Next, they approached Mr. Lowry, an agitated man pacing near a group of attendees. "Mr. Lowry, were you close to Sir Reginald?" Tipo asked, trying to glean information. "Close? Hardly. I conducted business with him, but he was brazen, often losing money in bad deals," he replied, scratching his head irritably. "I wanted nothing more than to keep my investments secure." Mark watched his fidgeting fingers. "Your investments? Profitable, were they not?" Lowry narrowed his eyes, taken aback. "That is none of your concern." As they gathered more testimonies, a picture of suspicion began to emerge. Each attendee displayed a mixture of rivalry and resentment toward Sir Reginald. "We need a suspect list," Tom concluded. "There's too much anger to ignore." Chapter 7. Observations and Conclusions. Later that evening, back at Baker Street, the boys helped compile their findings into a chart. Holmes leaned over the table, nodding thoughtfully. 3 primary suspects emerge: Lady Helena, Mr. Lowry, and Mr. Thompson, an investor who lost considerable wealth due to Sir Reginald's decisions, he assessed. But we need more insight into their motives. Tipo asked, "What about alibis? Can we verify their whereabouts during the time of death?" Holmes arched an eyebrow. "A crucial observation, my dear Tipo. We must gather alibis from each suspect and cross-reference their timelines. "But they may not be honest," Mark warned, a shadow of doubt creeping in. "True, but inconsistencies often reveal the truth," Holmes replied, a glint in his eye. Chapter 8. A Night of Revelations. The next day, the boys and Holmes set out to confront the suspects once more. Aiming to pin down their alibis, they found Lady Helena first in a nearby cafe. "Lady Helena, what time did you leave the gala?" Tom questioned directly, trying to catch her off guard. "I left quite late, after Mr. Thompson," she said smoothly. "We were discussing Sir Reginald's investment plans, which unfortunately went sour." "Interesting," Tipo muttered, jotting down notes. "Can anyone verify this?" "Why should I need verification? You are merely children," she retorted icily. Unfazed, they moved next to Mr. Lowry, who bristled upon seeing them. "What do you want now?" he spat. "Just checking your alibi. You claim to leave early," Mark pressed. "I left after an argument with Hastings. I found him insufferable, but I did not revive murder," he snapped. Finally they approached Mr. Thompson. This time they noted a distant gaze and the randomness of his responses. "Thompson, where were you after Sir Reginald was found?" Holmes pressed, narrowing his gaze. I was at the bar, reflecting," he stammered, visibly twitching under the scrutiny. "Reflecting or plotting?" Tom whispered, nudging Mark and Tipo as they exchanged wary looks. Chapter 9. The Final Time. With suspicions heightened, the boys gathered that night with Sherlock Holmes to assess their findings one last time. "The pieces are starting to fit together, but we need a revelation, something concrete to prove one of them guilty," Holmes said, tapping his fingers on the table. Tom suddenly had a thought. What about the glass? The broken glass from Sir Reginald's study. It could hold fingerprints or clues. "An astute observation, Tom," Holmes replied, grinning. "Let us revisit the scene and inspect it further." Chapter 10. The Library Encounter. As they arrived back at the library, Holmes examined the shards of glass scattered on the floor with renewed fervour. "Let's take these back to my lab," he declared abruptly. Hours later, as the fire crackled in Baker Street, Holmes analysed the fragments under a microscope. The boys looked on with bated breath. "Boys, we might have it. Yes, a fingerprint," Holmes proclaimed as he lifted the glass shard with an excited tremor. "We could run it through the fingerprints database." "How will that help?" Mark asked, puzzled. "With luck, it should match one of our suspects," Holmes replied, grinning as he began compiling data into his notepad. Chapter 11. The Climax. Later that evening, Holmes gathered the boys for a final confrontation at Ponsby Manor. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation as they summoned the main suspects to the library. "I have evidence that will reveal the truth," Holmes stated, confidently meeting the suspect's eyes. The guests watched nervously as Holmes revealed the fingerprint matched none other than Mr. Thompson. You planned the murder to align your business interests. Sir Reginald was in the way, he declared. Mr. Thompson's face turned pale. I didn't mean it. It was an accident, he stammered. Tom felt a mixture of anger and sympathy for the man, but knew justice must prevail. And now your answer must be confronted, he interjected. The authorities arrived at the manor promptly, taking Mr. Thompson into custody, while the other guests gasped in disbelief. Chapter 12. A Hero's Return. Afterwards, the boys reconvened with Holmes, a whirlwind of emotion swirling within each of them. Thank you for your incredible insight, boys, Holmes said, a rare warmth in his voice. Couldn't have done it without you, Mr. Holmes, Tom replied gratefully. You're the best detective ever. Tom and Mark chimed in, excitement buzzing in the air. The adventure had changed them once again, and they felt like seasoned detectives. What an experience! It was even more thrilling than last time, Mark said, heart still racing. Yes, and who knows what awaits us next, Tipo wondered aloud. With each boy closing their eyes and picturing the oak, a swirl of colours enveloped them once again, bringing them safely home. Chapter 13. Home at last. The boys landed back beneath the great oak tree, breathless and filled with wonder. The familiar sights drew them back, and the thrill of adventure lingered in their minds. Tom grinned. I can't wait for our next journey. Mark nodded enthusiastically. I've got so many ideas for the next mystery. Just wait until we tell everyone about this one. They won't believe us. Tipo laughed, his heart pounding with exhilaration. As they headed home, bright stars twinkling above, they knew that their experiences had woven a bond that would last a lifetime. Each adventure strengthened their friendship, and each case taught them invaluable lessons. With the secret held close between them, they looked forward to all the mysteries waiting just beyond the horizon. The end. Sherlock Holmes and the Sir Reginald Ponsby Case by Namoko Nikora. Copyright by Namoko Nikora.